Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Anthropology 499, Anthropological Writing. It's the 7th of February. It's Friday of week 4. We're moving right along in the semester. We are down here at the last day of our audio tour. That's kind of exciting. In a lot of classes, this might be the culmination of your entire semester, but not for us. It's just part 1 of 4. We're going to be moving on. But it is the kind of thing that you can imagine. You could do a number round of revisions with this. You could also do another couple rounds of research, maybe go back to the museum, back to the archives, and keep building on it. The point of this class is not building museum tours or something like that. It is to write. So the idea is to get you kind of familiar with a number of different forms of anthropological writing. So today we are going to continue our discussion, our hands-on experience with peer review. And for most of you, there's a few of you missing, but for most of you, this should be a great opportunity to get some kind of last minute feedback on your audio tour before you have to turn it in. Let's do this weekend. So please take any kind of comments that you might have gotten from your peer reviewer, add those in. Also, make sure to use those additional kind of factual material, which myself, Autumn, and Regina provided and has been put onto the Canvas website for if you need a little bit more dates or information about who and what is related to those objects. Remember, also, you need to turn in your workshop if you hadn't turned it in by now. I think the link closed 4 minutes ago. I think it closed at 2. But if there's anyone who has one and is ready to send it, please just send it on to me and I'll do that. During class today, we're going to have time. We'll spend probably the first 15 minutes or so with you, with one person and your partner, giving comments to the other one. And then we'll switch about halfway through, and you'll have about 15 minutes to do comments for the other person. That way you can kind of see what it's like on both sides of the equation. So what we're going to do is when you do this, hopefully you went over the sheet when you were doing comments. Did you all kind of take those lessons that we went over on Wednesday about what actually to do? Remember, you're not grading. You are giving them helpful comments and constructive feedback to help make their papers better. Remember, that's what we're going to be doing a number of different times throughout the semester. We're going to be doing this for your book review as well as your op-ed as well. So it's a good kind of practice to get into because as we go forward, you'll have to do it again. And hopefully it makes your writing better. And you're going to get another set of eyes on your paper, which hopefully will kind of pick up on things that you might have missed. Everything from spelling and grammar and punctuation, all the way up to kind of bigger existential almost questions about like, what is the best order for you to rearrange these paragraphs in? Or is it better to start with description and then go into kind of the history or vice versa? Or is there more kind of narrative devices you should be using to kind of bring the audience in? Any of those kind of things that you want to talk about, right? Remember to give positive feedback as well. You don't want to like crush their hopes and dreams, but also, like you saw in the video last time, you only get one, oh, I like it for the whole class, right? Because if you just say that and that's all you have, well, that's not very productive. You're just going to give them a gold star and they won't actually get to improve, right? So make sure that you're giving suggestions, helpful suggestions, things that are actually actionable. You don't have to be able to fix the problem, but even kind of pointing out that there is a problem is very useful for the person who's writing this. So positive stuff, the things you like, things that are working well, especially if some things in there are not working well and you need, like, well, a lot of these don't really get into good description of what the object is. But this one, right, the peanut cart, you do a really great job. You should kind of model it more on that. So if you can find good examples within their own work of what they're doing well, then it's a little nicer to hear that comment because you're like, oh, I did it. I just need to like, spend more time and do it on the rest of it. So as you're getting these comments, right, as a reviewer, as the person being reviewed, right, remember, don't argue with them. It's not about like a debate. It's not like, well, I think this topic sentence is effective and you're wrong, right? Just kind of smile and nod like my grandma. So smile. Yeah, that's wonderful. Take the feedback with a grain of salt. This was a professional paper for graduate students. This is a graduate class. I always tell them, right, you get some time right after class. You can be mad. You can be like, that person doesn't know what they're talking about. Burn off a little bit of steam, but then maybe later go back to it later tonight and see, well, maybe they did have some good points, right? So don't use the time to like argue with them about whether you're right or wrong. Take the comments, take the feedback, and feel free to ask lots of questions about how you can make things better. Remember, you're not losing points based on what that person wrote you. So everything that they're going to give you is constructive. Okay, are there any questions before we break into our groups now that I think everybody's here who's going to be here?
I'm doing this on any like new versions. We're not doing it on any old like reviews. So like if they updated it or whatever, we're doing it on the newest version.
You're doing it on the version that I sent you on Monday when we were at the archives. And hopefully they've added something to it as well, but they'll be able to incorporate your feedback as well. Other comments? Yep. During class or probably shortly thereafter, I'll collect them all and then I will resend them out to the appropriate people. Cool. Did everyone turn in a workshop through Canvas? Does anyone still need to do that? Okay, I'll open it up for another till the end of class till 3. So you can turn it on until then, and then I'll send them out right afterwards. Okay. If there's no other questions or comments, please split up into your groups. I think everybody knows where you're supposed to go. I'll put on some music while you work. All right, let me open up that before I forget.
I think we're just submitting the one, and then our paper is like our final.
Yeah. So on here, before we get too far into it, this is the Canvas module for this week. Turn in your edits or your peer review of your partner to this link, workshop number 1. And then once you've collected your comments and you've made your final best draft of your audio tour, turn it in here to paper number 1. Cool. All right, I'm going to pause the video now for those of you watching at home, and I'm going to open up this workshop until 3 o'clock, till 3 p.m. So if you haven't turned it in, please do that now. Okay, everyone, now you've had 15 minutes or so for each of you to respond to the other person, and you've gone through the whole peer review experience on both sides. So now what we're going to do for the last little bit of class is to think about kind of how the process went for you. What did you think? Was it useful? What kind of stuff did you get out of that process? Yeah, and how was that maybe different from what would happen if you were just like reading it in your head? You're like, that's fine, right? Yeah, what are some specific examples of something that someone pointed out to you today that you might not have noticed on your own? I have terrible tick, right? Like I just say the same little phrases over and over because you just get into a rut. You don't know what to say. And so you can just plug it in, right? And especially in an audio tour like this, it's going to be real noticeable. So it helps to have someone to be like, hey, I've heard that transition like 3 or 4 times. Let's mix it up a little bit. What do you think, Ethan?
One of my sentences personally tend to like too long and it could just be condensed thoughts.
Yeah, right. A lot of times we get really attached to our sentences. We spend so long like picking the right words and typing it out. It's often very hard to cut and condense down to something more manageable. But especially again for an audio tour, that's really often what we want to do. Anybody else have something that someone showed you in your own work that maybe was surprising? Yeah, it was too high or too low? Too high. Yeah, it's usually going to be too high more than because you're all, you're senior college students and, your professors are always telling you to write more intelligently, write less colloquially. But for this assignment, we have to remember our audience and we have to think about how those might be received and how maybe it's off-putting to someone if they don't feel like they're on our level, right? So that's kind of what you got out of being reviewed by someone else. How about the flip side? What did you get out of reviewing someone else's work and then not only on paper, but also having this kind of interpersonal live exchange with them? What was it like to be on the other side? Did you feel powerful? Red pen everywhere. No. Did you feel intimidated? Did you feel overwhelmed? I think. Yeah, did anybody else have that experience that you read someone else's tour and you're like, oh, I didn't even think of putting it that way, or I didn't think to include that, or that's an interesting storyline, which maybe I'll include on one of my things, right? Feel free to use your comments about someone else on your own work, right? It's not just that you can give comments, but sometimes those critiques, right? The best way of like seeing yourself is to like look at someone else and you say, oh, I should make this change in my own work. So I think that's really good. And I think we're going to like, because we're doing it again, do you feel like you have a much better idea of what we're going to do for our op-ed and our book review when we review each other? Cool. And when we do those, they'll be a little bit shorter. One's about 1,500 words and one's about 500 words. So we're going to do two of them. We're going to have, instead of one day, we'll have 2 days where we'll have a chance to work with each other. We'll work with one partner one day, and then we'll flip. Okay. When you got those comments, were any of those comments hard to hear for you? Were any of them, did you feel like they're maybe like being a little mean? That's nice. You're all nice to each other. That's good. And then finally, how do you think you're going to incorporate that person's feedback? Are you just gonna like accept all, or are you gonna like take it with a grain of salt? What parts did you find particularly useful that you're going to go home today and fix on your paper before you turn it in? Just factual errors, right? It's you don't want to go have that turned in and be embarrassed every time someone goes to the museum. Like Billy Kid died like 10 years before it. Silly, right? Anything else? Yeah, right. It might be perfectly clear to you because you wrote it, right? But then for someone else listening to it or reading it, it might be a little difficult. So make sure that you take those into consideration. Your partner spent a lot of time; they spent their effort making those comments and suggestions to you. So please take them under consideration and make those changes. Make a better paper, and it'll help me because then I get to read good papers instead of less good. And this is going to be part of your future career, especially if you want to go on and do kind of academic stuff in the future. Peer review process is what you're going to have to do from here on out, whether it's in graduate school doing your prospectus and your thesis, or if you're writing journal articles or books. I have a couple coming back and I need to send them back out. And it's just kind of this never ending process. So it's good to kind of get a feel for what it's like to be on both sides of this equation and think about, it's a useful skill for you kind of going forward. Okay, are there any questions about the peer review process kind of in general or specifically, or kind of big picture about, what you're supposed to do for this assignment, or any last minute questions because you are turning it in before I see you again? Okay, did everyone turn in a peer review assignment to the workshop link? No, you didn't? It's open till 3, so 13 more minutes. After 3 o'clock, when that link closes and everyone's turned it in, I'll send you back the corrected version that your partner gave you, and then you can make the corrections. So turn in this weekend. It says due Friday, but I won't get to them till Monday. So please, just as long as you turn it in by like when I show up on Monday morning, it won't be considered late. And then on Monday, we're going to come back here and we're going to start a whole new project, watching TV shows and looking for big content meeting in anthropology. So come back for that. It's a fun activity. See you then. Yeah.
For our book review, we wanted to start a book earlier.
Yep.
Are we sending you